Okay, thank you very much. I love the Canadian accent. Unfortunately, you have to listen to my Swazi accent here, or I turn it slowly into Singlish. So I'll try my best. Anyway, um, I don't want to bother you too much with this, but it is still important to know the story behind a person. So I was born in Switzerland. I think there was a slide before, or well, that goes in the wrong direction. Sorry. Yeah. So I was born in Switzerland, did my studies there, which I'm very thankful. So probably you will be as well when you finish here in Singapore. I was a lecturer at university level in Switzerland as well. And but then more importantly, I followed my true passion, which was sport and coaching. I'm a high performance coach by nature, by my brain, the way my brain operates, but as well I like to be an educator. Of late, though, I became coach of coaches. So first in Queensland for the last 3 years, and now here in Singapore. My most important job, I believe, is to assist the Singaporean swimming coaches to move ahead with their skills. As Lorraine said earlier on, we need mentors who have been there, who have the experience, whether developmental levels, whether high performance level, who can assist the younger coaches or the willing coaches who want to learn to move ahead in time. So, it's the other direction now, I'm learning. So I had some success in swimming, coaching, coming from Switzerland, where no Swiss swimming coach ever won an Olympic medal, or gold medal. So I come from a culture where I did believe at that stage it's pretty much not possible. So if you sit in this room, you're one step ahead because a swimmer in this country has won an Olympic gold medal. Where I came from, no one did. So I had to create the belief in myself. And one of the biggest things was education, 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 and then go and gain more and more experience on the road. So moving into the topic. So what actually is it that makes an athlete succeed at the top level or at any level? And to me, it's one simple answer to that. It's you the coach, the culture you create around yourself or in your environment, with the team that you have, with parents you have. So you have to establish that. You have to drive this. It's what you create in your daily and training environment. Again, it's what will make the difference. It's not what you know, it's what you apply day by day, day by day. And it's the standards you will set as a coach. What is acceptable? What is maybe not acceptable? What is acceptable behavior of your athletes? What is acceptable behavior of the parents in your environment? Of any other team members in your environment? That is crucial towards the future. I'm a massive Maria Montessori fan for many reasons, and where she got a lot of her ideas from was a man called Pestalozzi. He was a Swiss educator, and Maria was heavily influenced by Pestalozzi. Now, these few sentences say to me, particularly if I work in developmental levels, and I think we all must agree that we work in the field of children. If I look around here, probably most of you work with younger athletes than probably with mature athletes. Is that true? Most of you? So you work with children. So what should that look like? What should that feel like? What should it be every single day if you work with children and want to develop them? Whether as an athlete, as a student, it doesn't change that much. One of the crucial aspects, again, is what environment do we provide for our children? Are they childlike environments? Are they childlike languages, developmental appropriate messages that we get across? Or do we just copy what we maybe hear from a world-class coach and we copy that down exactly the same way to an 8 or 10 or 12-year-old child? Is that right or not? So if I look at this facility, To me, that looks fun. That looks like a nice challenge. If I look at this facility here, the next one, unfortunately, this is my sport. Oh, touch that. Sorry. Unfortunately, this is my sport. I know a lot of learn to swim schools look a bit different. They look more like the picture before. But a lot of children work out as well in this kind of environment. And you have to translate it to your own sport. Does it look the way it should look? Does it feel the way that children feel safe, comfortable, that they have fun at an appropriate level? Some real statistics from active healthy kids in Australia. So these are particular skills that the Australian children are nowadays capable, or more importantly, probably not capable anymore. And if you look at some, I hope this is the beam here. If you look at some, here it's still pretty good, side galloping. I don't know why that's so good, but it's good. But you look at leaping, the modern child, or even sprinting, not even 50% of the kids can sprint. The boys are a little bit more likely than the girls, even further down. To me, they're alarming stats. We probably get to why this maybe looks this way. Now, this is generally speaking how children go to the school. I come originally from a country where every single child walks to school, which I think is a very good thing. Structural and functional strength and skill development helps a lot. But generally speaking, the trend in the world is that it goes down and down and down. So we have kids who move less. We have kids who do less outdoor sports. We have kids who sit much more in this position behind some kind of electronic tool. And that's another thing that we have to consider. How does the child arrive at your door? If you have an 8-year-old 20 years ago, they probably would have been climbing trees, jumping over fences and so on. And now the child arrives at your door differently. So does even developmental sport today look the same way as it would have looked 20 years ago? Or are there things we have to adjust in that term as well? Another statistics from around the world in a similar way. So if you were to line up kids for a 1 mile race in the 1975 to a comparison 2010, 35 years around the globe in all the nations or continents, all the children have less abilities in this particular skill. So where does it come from? And what's the impact on that? So understanding you're a coach. So if you coach in this level, beginner level or intermediate or performance level, what hat do you have to put on? And most of you will coach maybe for half an hour, 45 minutes, an age group, 8 to 10 years old. And then you turn around and the next group you have in front of you is maybe a group of kids that are maybe 14 years old. So instantly you have to change the hat on and start to speak differently, communicate differently, bring different sets, different emphasis throughout their journey overall. In Australia, they did research in this regard. What is actually expected from a coach, from the high performance athletes reflecting back on their career? Meaning, they were reflecting, a high performance athlete was reflecting, when I was young, what was really important to me? And I moved through the career, what became important? And if you can see here, what was really, really important at the young age, the ability to motivate and encouraging. What was not so important is the detail of knowledge for the sport. So I say to the coaches who work with the younger athletes, if you're Santa Claus every single day on pool deck or wherever you work out, then you're the one big step ahead, because the kids, they want to see Santa Claus every single day. If you can create that environment that you motivate them to arrive at your gates, that you motivate them to do whatever they need to do at that stage. It's not the absolute perfect movement and skill. Yes, we want that somewhere, we want to teach them, but it's engage them. And as we all know, engage them in a lot of different movements. So the engagement of different movement comes, if you can't create movement literacy at a young age and then the physical literacy, then we are all challenged throughout the journey later on to get to top high performance sports. So what is the goal in a career of training? So is it the goal to be highly, highly competitive at the age of 10? Or is the goal to be competitive at 11, 12, or 13, 14? Or is the goal actually to have a peak performance when the body is ready and the mind is ready to perform at a peak level? So some true stats from the US. So in the US, they did they looked into it, the top 117 and 18-year-old performances across the history of their sport in the 100 freestyle of the boys. They had a look how many of them were at the age of 10 and under, already later on still in that list. So of the top 100, when they were 17, 18, they tracked back in time how many of these athletes were in the all-time 100 rankings of 10 years and under. Two athletes only. So if we go one further up, 6 swimmers in the next rankings. Even at the 13 to 14 years of age, there were only 11 athletes were later on still represented in the 17, 18-year-old group. And then 29. So it means even from 15 to 16, moving to 17 and 18 years old, 71% of people dropped out. That's a massive, massive sum. So why is this? If you ask yourself, why? What happens throughout the career? Which 10-year-old wins a race? It's the one that has been committed the most, that worked the hardest for the longest? Or was he maybe just a little bit taller, stronger, and he was 10 years and 11 months old, racing the other ones who were 10 years and 0 months old? What was it what allowed a 10-year-old to go fast? And how much does it really matter in the long-term run? So 29 swimmers at the age 15 to 16, 71 are not in that list in another year's, 2 years' time. Burnouts, too early specializing, all many reasons of why they don't step onto it. And how can we as a profession approach this, that we more likely bring the kids through in the sport when it really matters? That's when they're older, when they can perform. So I hope these stats, I found them quite impressive. So if you look at development stages of a baby, so most of us kind of know how this works. The baby is born, can barely sit there, till within 1 year to 15 months, somewhere around there, they can walk. But what happens in between is so crucial. So if they don't go through all these steps, functionally and structurally, they won't build the muscles and the structure and the bones the way they should be, that by the end, these little buggers can walk. On the other side as well, looking at this picture is, how hard is this? How much do they have to endure? But they just believe it's possible because they see the rest of the world doing it. But you would not expect them to just skip a phase like this, not sitting, and take them from there straight onto the legs. But how many times as coaches do we do this? If I look at swimming, the nature of swimming, I see swimming coaches teaching their young children a stroke like Joseph Schooling or Michael Phelps, which in my belief has absolutely nothing to do with swimming. What is swimming at that age? It's about learning to use their body, that they can float, that they can align their body, that they can create drag or can use drag to hook on and to accelerate. That's to me swimming. Now you again have to translate it to your own sport. The act of balance, applying of strength levels to a certain degree. But again, the child wouldn't skip these stages, otherwise it just won't end up with the right movements and patterns. And so should coaching look like. So I'm a big fan as well of the Canadian model, and Australia in the last, probably since 2010, has tried hard to follow, set up their own concept and their own models, and they call it the F10 model. Now again, in the big context is the first time in Australia they talked in the last 7-8 years as well about the foundation to get that part right. Oh, sorry. What did I do now? Was that me? Okay. So in swimming terms, the first time they talk about foundation swimming coaching. Interestingly enough, Learn to Swim community, which is in Australia rather big, and I've learned now here in Singapore as well, it's a massive number of people. They've never directly communicated to Swimming Australia. There was never a direct link. The coach's education somewhat loosely was connected, but we had this massive potential of children in the water, but it never went one step further, that actually these two different groups were talking to each other and what is a functional way to transfer young children from the learn to move, in our sense, learn to swim, to the more to the training ages. Participation was a word that was never ever mentioned. And by now I'm a little bit suspicious about participation in Singapore as well. Is that an accepted sport, just to do sport to participate? Or does sport always have a sense of you have to achieve something? I'm not sure yet. I know what I believe, but I'm not sure yet about the country here. Not that I want to attack it in any sense, but there are probably questions we have to ask each other. So participation as a sport should be right. If a child is talented in physical abilities, that's where they are, and academically maybe not as talented, that child still has a gift. That child still has something to offer and something to look at. Again, as a sport, and we had a look in Queensland. I was in Queensland, the head coach, at how we develop very particular areas. And a lot of it was based as well on the common long-term athlete development schemes. Now, actually, by now, I don't really like the word long-term athlete development that much anymore. I talk much more about long-term coach development, because the coach is the one who stands there at the end and has the most time with these young children or older children. So the coach has a big responsibility to learn in this field. So I use much more the LTCD model than the LTID model. But again, it does matter how it looks like, but again, whatever happens, it has to happen in a coordinated way. And we heard that from Lorraine as well. If the coach stands there alone and the parents don't understand it, what I hear quite often here, well, then we have a problem. I can hear stories of some clubs offering to 6-7-year-old swimmers 4 2-hour sessions a week, where they go 3.5 to 4 kilometers at that age, which I was rather shocked. And the coach tells me they actually try to lower the numbers, not the length of the session, to 4 1.5-hour sessions. And the parents were incredibly upset about that change. So what did the coach do? What do you think? Gave in to the parents? Luckily, this one didn't. So again, but the coach risked, because of that, what? Losing some of the swimmers. So there's an incredible pressure on you as what you have to do, what you stand for, and so on. So as much as some of these things look beautiful, I know that reality out there is really, really challenging. And that's a cultural shift, a society shift that we have to approach together in order to change it. Again, whatever these numbers mean, it's crucial that we keep on educating one of the biggest groups, let's call the parents. So when we were in Queensland, and now we start this here as well in Singapore, probably 4 or 5 years ago, the first time when we really hit the road with these messages as well. At competitions, we delivered messages. Now the Singapore National at the SNAG Championships, the first time we will put up banners for parents. We say it's for the athletes, but it's really for the parents, where there's some information in the front, like on a big banner, but then there will be links to our webpage where there's more educational material for parents and for the athletes. So together, again, if we manage that to slowly shift the goalpost, we need each other, we need to talk about it, and we need to get all these groups involved, then that's the only way that I think that we can do it. Again, it doesn't really matter what this particular model says, because you have to translate it in your own sport, and I know there's so many great models out there on the internet as well. The younger coaches today have it much easier than we used to have it. To chase anything was hard in those days. Again, the second part, again, doesn't really matter that much. I just want to quickly acknowledge these two guys. They both worked for me in Australia, and some of it was done together with them and myself, and for presentations in the past. So as a coach, we quite often look at it this way. There's a season, and by the end of this season, I have to perform with my athletes. Okay? And again, the question is this what we really should look at, or should we look at the career? Instead of season planning, we maybe should look more at the career planning. So suddenly that one season becomes this tiny little bit in a long-term development. Somewhat that can take a little bit of pressure off us as well. Or it just shifts the focus of what is important at this moment. So the career versus the season preparation. If I look, these are statistics from the London 2012 Olympics freestyle swimming. And you can see how old the average finalist is over here, and how old the average medalists are. And so that's a substantial age. So probably the shorter this distance, the older they are, the longer the distance, the younger they get. Particularly Katie Ledecky as a 15-year-old killed these statistics a little bit. But if you look across the sport at the next one, again, you look at an average finalist is somewhere 25 years of age. On the men's side, 22 years of age here, same medalist, pretty much the same age. So what does that tell us? You have time. You have time to go through the right process. Do it in a way to develop the kids at the appropriate age in the right areas. Allow them to play a lot of sports when they are younger. And then slowly shift it towards specializing at the age of, depending, 12, 14, 15, 16 years of age. But you have time. So if I see this as a young coach and I think, well, okay, I maybe don't have to rush that quickly through it and do it right. So how could we plan for this? I'm not necessarily the totally believer of the good old 10,000 hours, but it's still something that allows us to compare it a little bit. So today, if we train quite a lot here at the younger age, 4 sessions, 1.5 hours, 6 hours per week, accumulating that, and then from 10 on, I kind of double it and then go to 600, whatever. So somewhere at the age of 21, somewhere around there, I get to my good old 10,000 hours. Some talent gets there 6,000 hours, some need 14,000 hours, but let's call this just an average. So if I shift this a little bit and just start later, 2 hours, 2 sessions, 1 hour a week, and then I move on. So how could that look like, and what's the impact on this? So what you see is it takes me only a tiny little bit longer to get there. So now 23 years of age. Where does 23 years of age fit on the scale with the Olympic finalists and medalists? We're pretty much spot on, yeah? Okay. So we have done enough work that way as well and can get there. Again, something maybe that allows your mind to be a little bit more at ease. This is right as well. So we always need to convince ourselves as well that we believe, yeah, it's the right thing. So we have time to get there. And even if it's 2 years later, it's still early enough to work in that area and in that field. Okay. So obviously then the next level is what is pre-puberty, puberty, and post-puberty. So how does a whole career look like? And what are things that slowly change throughout that part? I don't want to explain this right now. If you know about this, what are window sensitive training phases and so on, opportunities when to start to train with particular aspects of sport. If you know this, that's fine. If you don't know it today, make sure by tomorrow you know about it. But it's crucial towards the development. So I don't want to go through example or through each example, but certain aspects you wouldn't start to work before post-puberty, like max strength development. But then certain other aspects you want to train throughout the whole career, like speed, generally speaking speed. Now, if I go to most of Learn to Swim programs and development programs, I actually see only slow swimming. They just go laps and laps and laps, laps after laps, never sprint kicking over 10 meters. A little competition, just the arms, with the arms pulling over 10 meters, or streamlining underwater, a little competition. But very, very clearly, and if we had this going further down, even at the age of 4 and 6, at the age of 6, there's a massive developmental window for speed development for any child. So coordination, as we can see, in and out of the water is crucial all the time. What are the heart training, like anaerobic tolerance, is as well something that starts more so after the puberty. Now, one of the big challenges, I guess, is peak height velocity as well, that you have to understand as a coach. The group in front of me, some maybe at the age of 14, they have passed already peak height velocity, the fastest growth of their body, and some are still far away from getting there. And what's the impact on that? And when do I train them harder? When do I train them more? If you look at this, is rather crucial. So a lot of these aspects of when puberty happens is directly linked to peak height velocity. So for another child, they can move up here 2 years up there. For another child, everything could move 2 years back down there. So it depends, it matters to the child where they are at that stage and what training is appropriate for them. So again, it's something you have to learn and find out throughout the journey. Okay, so improvement over time. This is kind of what we see or we think theoretical, but this is really reality. So we never know how a child develops, but you as a coach have to stay with the child. You have to encourage them, whether they're a late developer, an early developer, you have to understand this and you have to keep them there. If you start to act and just give encouragement to the kid that constantly swims the fastest or beats the other ones in the pool at the developmental age, to me this is absolutely wrong. At that stage you don't know who will be the future champion. And not that just the future champion should get the right of getting your attention, but every single child in there should get the right. In swimming terms, one of the absolute top swimmers at the Olympics in Rio was Adam Peaty, an English breaststroker. and he had more, excuse me, he had more than 1 second an advantage in comparison to the rest of the field. He just took off and crashed everyone else. At the age of 14, Adam Peaty was 83rd in his district in the 100 breaststroke. 83rd. So again, how much attention did this guy get at that stage? No one knows. If anyone in here sits and tells me, I know in a group of 10, 12, 14-year-olds, I know which one will be the champion. Every now and then it happens, but most of the time it doesn't. Actually, I walked with my very first, I have a bachelor in physical education, and my very first lesson I had to give as a young student, I walked into gymnasium, and the teacher came up to me and said, look, this young girl over there, she's 10 years of age. One day she will be #1 tennis player in the world. And I kind of laughed a little bit, but it was Martina Hingis, so the guy was actually right. And interesting enough, on that day, I gave a hand-eye coordination lesson. I had no idea that she was in there, so I probably claim half of the success there anyway. No. But yeah, that was a true story. So again, throughout traditional periodization, and quite often as well used for younger children, we use adaptation weeks. We have minor competitions where we train 3 weeks harder and adaptation and do things like that, and then taper for a minor competition, and then do the same again and maybe taper here for the big meet. That could be one way to do it. Another way would be that we a bit slower, more gradually build up, so we don't force adaptation every 3 weeks in there. So instead of going steep up here, we just go a little bit slower. We still taper here. Maybe one solution as well, but probably the one that I like more, much more, would be this. So for children, in my opinion, generally speaking, if they're before puberty, if they have a younger age, I mean, 2-3 days freshening up, that should be enough. I got 2 boys, they're 7 and 9 years of age. I certainly know if they have half a day rest, and their battery is full charged again. But to me, again, the gradual development, a bit slower progression, a bit slower progression here, but then not missing out of another developmental window where we can do work and develop more things, and then finally somewhat taper. Again, with younger kids, even at that stage, I wouldn't taper for them for that long. But to me, what are areas how we can work that way? Now, this, again, what does it do to me? It gives me more time. It gives me more time to work a little bit more often. I don't have to shut down in between. I don't have this big hole here where I work much less. So I can work a little bit more throughout that phase, but it's much more gentle, much more gradual build up, and I create the challenge that way. So most importantly, don't think I don't want you to work, hard with the athletes, but it's really, at the end of the day, you have to work really hard at working smart. Yeah. So just flogging the kids and just working them hard that way, that doesn't cut it anymore nowadays. So it needs to be the right stimulus. You need the right athlete at the right time, the right duration, and so on. So you have to measure a bit more stuff, like whether it's even peak height velocity. There's some simple measurements you can do even as a coach. You need to record a little bit more things. You need to observe your athletes a bit more and integrate that in the coaching. Yeah, it's maybe more work, but you will get the benefits from that. So how could the season planning look this way? In the first step is determine what stages of development your athletes is in, and you always have a larger group, so everyone is at a different stage, so probably have 3-4 groups across the whole group. Evaluate the previous season, fit in season with your career, plan for the athletes. Again, that's one of the big ones. So it's not about this season, it's about the career, getting back to the beginning. Set general goals of objectives for the new season. So what is it? But the general goal shouldn't just look like, I want them to swim faster. It should be specific. I want them to perform better in a certain level. I want them to be technically better equipped. I want them to have a better dry land routine. I want them to have a better recovery routine, or so on. Set the program, the structure should match somewhat the major training phases. But again, that major training phase should match that particular window of the career. I know at last year, first time I met Vincent, we talked a little bit about developmental aspect and NYSI and the functions of the NYSI. And should young athlete be able to get, if they're already performing quite well, should they be able to get 3 massages or physio treatment in 1 week at a developmental stage? Where then it becomes more a bit a passive thing. I got a problem here and I walk through the doors and I get some treatment over there and then I walk back out again. Or could these lessons look differently for a 14, 15-year-old, that they learn much more how to manage that side and almost a certain restriction of being able to get the same access as maybe a high performance athletes in the future. So should that look the same? Should that feel the same? I'll leave it up to you. So prescribe training variations for groups and individuals. One of the big things is to me, if we consider technical aspects being one of the important parts in sport, what is essential that I know that I can change technique? You need an incredible good sense for movement, for pattern, again, movement literacy. I can do a very simple example. If we sit at the table, please, you can join in, close your eyes, reach out with your arm, just right now, and then bend your arm, close your eyes, bend your arm to 90 degrees. And then once you think that's all right, you open your eyes and check whether that's a good 90 degree. We got a few pretty close, a few a little bit off. Well, that's all right. That's a simple thing. Now sport has constant change. Let's say a backstroker moving in, so overhead, straight overhead, bending the arm, moving through, pushing down, releasing, whilst the opposite side does the opposite, whilst the leg should kick straight up and bend down, and so on. So it's incredible complex movement patterns, what we have to be able to teach in whatever sport you're in. And so if a kid only learns new movements at the young age and stops learning new movements, the plasticity of the brain stops being good at learning new skills as well. I know which athlete I would like to have, someone who has this vast variety of movements and patterns to learn from, physical movements. And then you have someone who has only done one sport all the time and only one stroke in swimming terms all the time. It will be much harder to change things around. So in swimming terms, even with my older athletes, high performers, I used to give them things like a 3/4 freestyle, 1/4 breaststroke, where 3 parts of the body had to go freestyle, whilst the other just went breaststroke. So it's confusing for my old brain nowadays. And then if they can manage that, then it would have been 3/4. The 1/4 breaststroke moves around clockwise every single stroke, or anti-clockwise, and so on, just to make it more complex. It's entertaining for the coach as well. But more importantly, they learn about their bodies. They constantly need to learn new movements so they become good and stay in tune with their bodies and different movement patterns. In our sport, obviously, one of the biggest problems we have is a program that swimmers just swim. I remember some of the squats I trained, you threw a ball at a group of kids, and the ones who couldn't catch it, they were the swimmers. Sadly enough, because they never did that. But then again, my absolute top athlete who she has several world records, Olympic gold medals, world championships, gold medals. She was outstandingly the one who did the most different sports when she was young, up to the age of 10, up to the age of 14. She did incredible amount of sports. Libby Trickett was her name, and that came certainly through. So modern sport, back to what I said earlier on, the kids have moved less by the moment they arrive at your gate. So a typical swimming training, should that still be 60 minutes just swimming up and down, or should that be maybe 15 minutes or 20 minutes? Early season of more functional movement and pattern teaching a child athletic skills, which they can then translate into athletic performances in the water. Nowadays, I like the younger the child is, work on a healthy child, then work on a healthy athletic child, then I work on a healthy athletic swimmer. So that's from my side. If I'm a coach with developmental ages, health means structurally sound. We see so many kids with the shoulders in the wrong position. They can't stand straight anymore. We have to fix that before we move even on to another level. So they have to be healthy postural-wise, and then they have to be functionally able, and then they have to be athletic with this health and function, and then whatever sport they go for, they will be better. So my two boys, they've done gymnastics, they've done swimming, skateboarding, they got some team sport, they played a little bit tennis, they're now 9 years of age, and, and they still love doing everything, and I'm happy with that. I don't want them to become a swimmer, but if they want to become a swimmer, oh well, so it is. But I'm glad that we've chosen so many different sports. And Singaporean swimmers saw them on a training camp, just on bars, on hanging bars, and they thought they were monkeys, just the way they were acting. Again, I like the society here in Singapore as well to produce a lot of 7, 9-year-old little children who can climb, jump, go up a tree, and swing upside down on their knees and let go from the top and know exactly how to land on their feet again. And have a lot of movement pattern experiences that they, once they choose a sport, they know exactly in what direction they want to go. They are capable of transferring movement into a more specific sport throughout the journey. So last one. So again, fit in season within your career plan should be one of the most important part. So developmental stage, a previous training history of the athlete, even at high performance level, that still matters there. I had one of my athletes arrive at my program, already a world record holder, but in the gym she was like a regional champion, or not even a finalist. She was so poor in that area, so we had to upskill her in that area, and she absolutely destroyed her former world records within a very short time, because she had this massive window of opportunities to improve in a specific area to still move ahead. So had the coach done the job before, the one who was coaching her, probably I wouldn't have looked that good later on. So I have to thank him for not doing the full job there, unfortunately for him. So short-term, long-term goals, life commitments, individual needs. I know this sounds complex, and if you have a whole group in front of you, you maybe think that's too much to do. You don't have to absolutely individualize it, but you have maybe within a group 3 or 4 different groups, so sometimes particular exercises. You choose particular, there's a normal drill, then I have a digression drill for those where the normal drill is too hard. I have a progression drill for those who, when the normal drill is too easy. So I still do call it that drill, but you do A, this group does the common drill B, and the next group does the advanced drill C, so that we have always solutions ready for this. I think that's it from my side. So just finishing in closing, again, this is about swimming. So I hope it's for the fun of the water in our sport. It's children enjoying water. Again, if you gymnastics or track and field, it's the same. The children at the younger age have to enjoy this. They have to be able to play with friends. I would say if we do this job really well, they have fun, they play with their friends, then we can start to do all the crimes we really want to do with them as a coach. And that job is a little bit easier. So they should have fun with their mates, and in that sense, so long-term athlete development should be an all-round athletic development, and the experience a number of sports should be the sense of giving them the all-round abilities, athletic abilities as well. Thank you very much.